They say the sea has a voice, not the roar of waves or the whistle of wind, something deeper, something that waits beneath the surface and listens back when you speak to it. Every sailor who's been too long at sea hears it eventually. But there's one place where that voice becomes more than a whisper. They call it the Siren's Veil. No chart marks it, no captain dares admit to finding it. Yet every tavern from Tortuga to Port Royal carries its name like a curse. A place where the sea hums, the compass spins, and ships sail in but never return. I was young when I first heard the tale. Back then I served aboard the Vengeance under Captain Raphael Drake, a man whose legend burned brighter than his mercy. Drake didn't believe in curses. He believed in gold, rum, and the strength of his own will. When a half-drowned fisherman spoke of a stretch of black water east of Tortuga, where moonlight drowned and the ocean sang, Drake didn't flinch. "The sea's been calling me all my life," he said. "Perhaps she's finally ready to pay what she owes." A week later, we set sail. The air grew heavy, the gulls vanished, and the waves grew quiet, too quiet. Even the wind seemed reluctant to breathe. Then, one night, the sea began to sing. It was faint at first, soft as silk, a woman's voice, rising and falling with the tide. It wasn't like music, not really. It was emotion turned to sound, sorrow, longing, beauty so pure it ached. The men froze. Some smiled, some cried. Captain Drake gripped the railing until his knuckles went white. "No man moves," he said, but his voice trembled. The song swelled, filling every crevice of the ship. It wrapped around us like a tide we couldn't escape. When I leaned over the side, I thought I saw faces beneath the surface, pale and perfect, eyes open wide, mouths moving in rhythm with the melody. That night, none of us slept. By morning, the wind had died entirely. The sea was still as glass, and the air smelled faintly of roses. And from that night on, the ocean never stopped singing. The song lingered for days. It drifted through the masts like mist, fading with the daylight, but always returning at dusk. None of us spoke of it, yet all of us heard it, that haunting melody, soft and patient, waiting for us to answer. Captain Drake fought it the only way he knew, through discipline. He barked orders, kept the men working through the night, doubled the rum rations to dull their senses. But nothing silenced that song. It wasn't in the air anymore. It was inside us. You could feel it humming in your chest, pulsing with your heartbeat. On the fourth night, the sea turned smooth as a mirror. The moon shone silver over the still water, and the melody came again, clearer than ever. This time, it wasn't distant. It came from the surface itself. That was when we saw her. A woman standing upon the water as though the waves had hardened beneath her feet. Her hair floated around her like ink in the tide, her eyes glowing faintly blue. She said nothing. She only watched. The crew froze. One of the men whispered a prayer. Another reached out, trembling, tears rolling down his face. Drake's voice cut through the silence like a whip. "Back to your stations!" he roared, drawing his pistol. He fired once. The shot echoed, but the woman didn't flinch. The bullet struck the sea and vanished without a ripple. Then she smiled. The song rose instantly, louder, stronger, echoing inside our skulls. Some men screamed, others laughed. One collapsed to his knees, muttering names of the dead. I tried to cover my ears, but it didn't help. The sound was in my bones. When it finally stopped, she was gone. Only her reflection lingered on the surface, rippling like smoke. We thought it was over, until morning. That was when we found the first empty bunk. No blood, no struggle. Just a pair of boots neatly set beside the bed. The man who slept there was gone. Drake gathered us on deck. His eyes were sunken, his voice hoarse. "No one speaks of what they saw," he ordered. "The sea plays tricks, and I'll not have fear command my ship." But as he turned away, I saw him glance over the side. And for a heartbeat, I swear I saw her face reflected there, smiling up at him. And from that moment, I knew. The captain was no longer fighting the sea. He was listening to her. After that night, Captain Drake changed. The fire in his eyes dimmed, replaced by something colder, quieter, obsession. He barely spoke to the crew anymore. When he did, it was only to demand silence. "Listen," he would say. "She's trying to tell us something." At first, we thought he'd gone mad, but one morning, when I brought him his ration of rum, I saw what he meant. There, carved into the wood of his cabin table, was a mark, a circle split by a crooked line, surrounded by small waves. The edges were burned black, the grooves still warm to the touch. Drake traced it with his finger. "A map," he whispered. "The sea gave it to me." The men grew restless. Some refused to work. Others prayed. The quartermaster swore we'd been sailing in circles. The stars never matched the compass, and even the sun seemed to rise where it shouldn't. The ocean itself had turned strange. The water shimmered faintly, almost alive, like the surface of a mirror that refused to stay still. Every night, the song returned, softer now, coaxing, tempting. It no longer frightened us. It felt familiar, like a voice from home. That was the cruelest part of it. The more we heard it, the less we wanted to stop. Then, one dawn, the mist ahead of us began to glow faintly blue. It pulsed in rhythm with the song. Drake stood at the bow, his coat billowing like a shadow. "There," he said, "she's showing the way." No one dared argue. We followed the light for what felt like hours. The fog thickened, swallowing sky and sea alike, until we sailed through a world made only of sound and shadow. And then, without warning, the mist broke. Before us lay a black island, jagged rock rising from a still, dark sea. No waves touched its shore, no birds circled above. It stood like a wound upon the world, silent and waiting. Drake smiled for the first time in days. "We've found it," he said softly. "The Siren's veil." But as the crew cheered weakly, I felt the air grow colder. The ocean beneath us stirred, just once, like something vast shifting in its sleep. And in that moment, I realized we hadn't found the island. It had found us. The island waited in silence. Not the kind of silence you find in calm seas or sleeping towns. This was something deeper, heavier, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Even the waves refused to touch its shore. We rode through the glassy water in uneasy quiet. The oars barely made a sound. Each stroke felt wrong, too smooth, as if we were moving through oil instead of seawater. When the keel scraped the black sand, the sound rang out sharp and hollow, like striking metal. The beach shimmered faintly under the gray sky. The grains weren't sand at all, but crushed glass, black and glittering. The air smelled faintly of salt and roses, though no flower could grow in such a place. "Treasure?" Drake muttered, stepping onto the shore. "It's buried here. I can feel it." None of us answered. At the center of the island, we found a pool, perfectly round, perfectly still. No ripples, no reflections, just a smooth black surface that swallowed the light. And from that pool came the song. It wasn't the haunting melody we'd heard at sea. It was fuller now. Hundreds of voices, men and women both, singing together in terrible harmony. The sound made the air tremble. Briggs, one of the younger sailors, fell to his knees. His eyes filled with tears. "They're here," he whispered. "My sons, they're calling for me." Before anyone could stop him, he stepped forward and touched the water. It didn't splash. It didn't even move. He just sank, as though the surface opened for him, taking him gently beneath. Then it closed again, smooth and silent. Drake stared at the pool, his face unreadable. "He's gone," I said. The captain didn't look at me. He only whispered, "No, he's found it." He ordered the men to dig. "If there's a song, there's something to hide," he said. "Gold doesn't sing without reason." Reluctantly, we obeyed. The shovel struck the black sand. It rang like iron. The song shifted, deepened, became a wail. Then the ground began to move. The pool rippled for the first time, and the earth beneath our feet trembled. The sand cracked open. And from the darkness below, something began to rise. The sand erupted beneath our feet, as if the island itself had teeth. Pale hands clawed through the black grains, reaching for the surface, for air, for us. The pool trembled, spilling water upward like a fountain, twisting into shapes that should not have existed. Figures emerged, not entirely human, not entirely spirit. Their skin glimmered like wet moonlight, their eyes dark and endless. The sirens. Their hair drifted around them like smoke on water, and their mouths whispered words that had no sound, only emotion, sorrow, hunger, longing. One of them reached for Captain Drake. I saw the frost form where her fingertips brushed his skin, and his breath caught. "You sought treasure?" she said, her voice echoing in his head. "Then take what is left of us." Around us, the men screamed. Some dropped their shovels and ran, but the sand swallowed their feet before they could reach the boats. Others were frozen, mesmerized by the figures rising from the earth and water. Their faces were beautiful and terrible, the faces of those lost at sea, their eyes accusing. The pool boiled, spilling water like black ink across the island. Waves formed, not outside the shore, but inside the sand itself, crashing and curling toward us, pulling the unlucky into their depths. I grabbed a sailor's arm as the ground beneath us cracked open, swallowing him into the abyss. His scream was cut short, replaced by a ringing silence that made my teeth ache. Drake, standing at the edge, raised his sword as if that could stop the tide. He shouted, cursed, begged. The siren's voice penetrated every corner of his mind. "The sea does not forgive greed," she whispered. The island quaked, shifting like a living thing. Rocks split, the black sand trembled, and the pool became a whirlpool of shadow and song. The cries of men, the hiss of water, the singing, all blended into one unearthly symphony that shook me to my core. I ran toward the boats, dragging as many men as I could. Behind me, Drake's figure stood in defiance, a solitary shadow against the madness. Then, with a surge of water and a chorus of impossible voices, he was gone. The pool settled suddenly, leaving a calm black mirror where chaos had been. The sirens receded, leaving only the sound of the wind and a faint lingering song, soft, cruel, eternal. I collapsed on the sand, gasping. The survivors were few, the terror seared into our minds. And yet, even as the sea returned to its calm, I knew one thing with certainty. The siren's veil had claimed its due, and it would come again. Dawn came slowly, as though the sun itself feared to rise over the veil. The island had vanished, swallowed by the black waters. Only the vengeance remained, drifting on a still sea that reflected the gray sky like a tarnished mirror. The deck was empty. No shouts, no clatter, no signs of struggle. Not a single soul remained aboard. The sails hung slack. The rigging swayed lazily, yet no wind moved them. Only the faint scent of salt and something else, roses or perhaps blood, lingered in the air. I moved cautiously, half expecting the lost crew to appear, laughing, whispering, or pleading. But there was nothing. Just the quiet lapping of water against the hull and the distant mournful echo of that same song, faint but unmistakable. The captain's cabin lay open. The logbook rested on the desk, its pages wet but legible. Only the remnants of the past remained. Shreds of maps, ink-stained notes, sketches of symbols we could not understand. I felt my stomach turn, remembering the siren's eyes, Drake's final struggle swallowed by the black surge, and the way the sand had devoured men like children disappearing into night. Yet the ship was pristine, rations untouched, ropes coiled neatly, lanterns still burning with a steady flame, as though nothing had happened. I ran through the cabins, calling names, but my voice only echoed. I stumbled over boots left neatly by a cabin wall. One of the crew, swallowed by the veil, yet his belongings remained, a reminder that what the sea takes isn't always physical. Sometimes it's the soul. I climbed to the deck again. The horizon stretched endlessly, smooth and empty. There was no island, no whirlpool, no movement. Only the sea, calm, beautiful, cruel. I wondered how many ships had vanished before us, how many crews had followed the siren's song to this empty perfection, only to be taken by her in ways we couldn't understand. The ocean whispered around me, a voice both tender and cruel. Even now I could hear it, faint beneath the sound of the wind, and I knew, without doubt, that the vengeance had not returned alone. She waits. The sirens wait, and the song will never end. As I sat alone on the deck, I realized that the veil wasn't a place. It was a promise. And one day, someone else would answer her call. Months passed before anyone saw the vengeance again. Fishermen reported a lone ship drifting near Havana, its sails limp, deck eerily silent. Those who boarded her spoke of a ship that seemed alive, creaking timbers as though it breathed, ropes pulsing subtly, and a cold that moved like water through the cabins. No crew, no sign of struggle, no bodies, only the faint echo of a song carried in the wind. Sailors whispered that the ship held its memories. The men who had vanished in the veil were somehow present in spirit, haunting the deck with unseen footsteps. Boots left neatly in cabins, shovels half buried in sand on the deck. The remnants of events no one could explain. Those who had entered the Vengeance said they felt watched, as if every glance met a pair of eyes beneath the floorboards, under the planks, somewhere in the shadows of the ship itself. Legends grew quickly. Fishermen and merchants spoke of glimpses at dawn, when the horizon held only fog and the faint glimmer of black sails. They claimed that if the wind was calm and the sea mirror still, you could hear the faintest trace of her song, the melody that had claimed the crew and left the captain's obsession carved into the heart of the ship. The Vengeance became a warning, whispered into every port, a tale told by sailors with haunted eyes, their voices dropping to a hush when newcomers approached. Some laughed at the story, dismissing it as rum-fueled nonsense. But the old men knew better. They had heard the song themselves on quiet nights, when the waves seemed to pause and the stars refused to shine in familiar constellations. I often think back to those days, to the Black Island and the pool that held the voices of the lost. The crew had vanished, the captain had vanished, and yet the story remained, alive in the waves, in the wind, in the quiet moments when the sea is calm and dark. The Vengeance sails still, they say, beyond the horizon, her ghostly form gliding silently through waters no chart can mark. The sirens still sing, and the song is no longer meant solely for the crew who followed them into the veil. It waits for anyone bold enough, foolish enough, or cursed enough to answer its call. And so the tale endures, whispered by the wind, carried by the tides, echoing in the hearts of sailors who have not yet succumbed. Those who hear it feel it first as beauty, then as warning, a reminder that some songs are not meant for the living and some debts are never repaid. The siren's veil is not gone. It waits, patient, eternal, singing for the next souls who dare to listen. Now, years have passed. I sit in a quiet tavern by the docks, old and gray, with nothing but the memory of the sea and a bottle of rum for company. The song still reaches me on the quietest nights. It drifts through the air, faint and distant, mingling with the creak of the wooden beams and the whisper of the waves against the pier. Young sailors laugh when I tell them the tale, shaking their heads and calling it a drunkard's story. They do not see the shimmer in the water, the way the air seems heavier when the night is still, the sense that something is watching. But I have heard it, not once, not twice, but countless times. And I know it's truth. The siren's veil is not a place marked on any map. It is a promise, a curse, a melody that will call out to any who wander too far or listen too closely. The sea carries it endlessly, shaping tides and dreams alike. It whispers in the foam, hums through the rigging of silent ships, and coils around hearts like smoke. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see the Black Island again, the pool at its center, and the countless pale faces of those taken before me. I remember the captain, standing defiantly before the sirens, and the men who vanished silently into the depths. I can still hear the echo of the song, half sorrow, half command, telling me that it is patient, eternal, and waiting. Even now I feel it beneath the floorboards of this tavern, in the lapping waves, and in the silence between breaths. It waits for the next crew, the next dreamer, the next fool who believes the ocean owes them nothing. The sea gives nothing freely. Every treasure, every song, every promise carries a price. And when the melody calls, there is no resistance, no hiding, no escape. The veil claims what is due, slowly, irresistibly, and forever. I have lived, but I have also listened. I have survived, but the memory lingers, a constant refrain in my mind. The song beneath the waves is not mine to forget, not mine to resist. One day, it will call to another, and the cycle will begin again. The siren's veil is eternal. Its song is eternal. And anyone who hears it will answer, as we all did, for no man can resist the ocean's voice forever.